From the place where we call the crazy winterized capital of the Midwest, only because we're still dealing with winter weather. I'm Brandon Hennis, and it is time for this YouTube live stream. It's under a different category than my prior posts, and there is a reason. Environment and Climate Change Canada has decided to drop their weather radio service effective today, March 16th, 2026. In today's conversation, I talk with you a little bit about why this is a bad idea and what this means for Canadian weather spotters, particularly those driving around, and where the mobile app may be a problem. Now, WeatherCan is a very good mobile app. I have checked its accessibility, and it is very blind-friendly. I'm actually quite impressed with the layout of WeatherCan. So I will say WeatherCan is a blind-friendly app, but the weather radio service dropping has a couple of implications that are not good for weather spotters. Now, generally speaking, the rule across most parts of Canada and the United States is that we don't want to be using our phones while we're driving. We want to keep our phones, especially in our dashboard, because when we're driving, we're not looking at the WeatherCan app. We're looking at the roadway as we're trying to drive around and spotting storms. Now, the problem is, with the weather radio service being down, this poses an issue for the weather service, or for weather spotters, because they can rely on each other through being on the phone or whatever, and whatever. But getting the most important warnings, when you have to pull over to the side of the road and check your phone because WeatherCan pops up with a notification, or wireless emergency alert comes up and notifies you of a particular event and time or whatever. And sure, there is the yes, but we have our local radio stations that do it. But I think about the people in some places like Norway House in not Long Prairie, Regina Beach, places like that, Moose Jaw, Last Mountain, that maybe they don't have a lot of, maybe some of these places don't have good cell signal in certain spots. So WeatherCan may not be as effective in those areas, particularly without cell service and coverage. The Hello Weather service also being disabled doesn't really help either. There's a lot of reasons why both of those services come into mind, and I'm sure somebody will post about that and how that might be a detriment. So the question that really comes up to mind is, why is this happening in Canada? Now, here in the United States, where I reside, where this video originates, our weather radio service is not going anywhere. Our weather service has already made very clear that NOAA has already made very clear that is a vital asset to the public. No matter if you have cell phones or not, the weather radios are the most efficient way to receive warnings and emergency alerts. And let's just be honest, our local radio stations, now I have some criticism for our local radio stations, and I'm going to point this out really quickly. Save for one station in Omaha that I honestly think has some of the most, hands down, the best severe weather coverage I've heard in this side of East Nebraska and Southwest Iowa. Actually, one of two radio stations. The big 50,000 watt blowtorch KFAB is one of the biggest, one of the best severe weather coverages I've heard, at least in this area. Directly here, of course, WHO in Des Moines, they do really good with their coverage down there. But here, we only have two major radio stations that really handle severe weather coverage that I can think of: KMA and KFAB. Now, Boomer, they do it as well, and of course, I've called in during major severe weather events. Boomer's a nice station, guys. Please give them a listen. If you like listening to older music, I mean, hey, I know I'm giving a bit of a plug, but I'm a radio guy, so what do you want? Recommended stations. That's going to be one of my future videos up here, is recommended radio stations to listen to. I did mention that the Super Spotlight Show is not exactly going to be on YouTube, but I did not say I wasn't going to be here. I just said I was shelving the Spotlight program. So in case anybody wonders, like, why are you here? I thought you said you weren't coming back. Well, didn't say exactly in what capacity I'd be here. Now you're finding out. What about the storm chasers? Let's go back to the same thing about Weather Radio Canada disappearing for just a minute, because I think, honestly, it's a subject that's gotten a lot of people irritated. The issue, really, in my opinion, is this. The Canadian weather, a lot of the people I've talked to who live in Canada, in fact, there were several sighted people I talked to in Canada who said the weather radio service for them has been very vital. And it's vital because two things. Number one, their phones, they can't always look at their phones all the time. So being able to turn on their weather radio and being able to hear, their local weather reports has been very, very efficient. And it has actually been very helpful to them over time because they've been able to just go back and, listen to the different stations and so on and so forth. And, and it really does. It helps being able to have that service at your disposal and knowing that, oh, I can actually tune into this and I'm gonna get the most up-to-date weather coverage as much as possible, because the weather radio service will be there, and anytime a tornado warning, severe thunderstorm warning, any of that gets issued, we're going to get the notice right away. Our weather-equipped receivers will go off, and we'll be notified. The problem is, I have a feeling a lot of this has to do with funding, but there may be other reasons about why it is happening, and so I want some of you guys to be kind of looking at this in the channel area here, and we're going to talk a little bit about this, and I might write up one of these times. I want to try to see if I can pull, if anybody can find some text-based ways to get some of these weather forecasts. I want to try some things, and then how to get some observations, how to pull observations from different areas, just to kind of see maybe what kind of other options could be available. And believe me when I say this, it could be the cost to maintain the equipment. When they installed iNotify, which gives us Tom and Ava, and then Chantal and Nicola, we have really, I feel like that, it maybe cost-wise became a lot harder to maintain because they're paying for a synthesizer they may not be able to afford. Whereas with IV pads and the voice of Dr. Steve Eady, which, by the way, in case you're wondering, is the voice that you were hearing for the longest time on the airport weather and stuff like that, and that'd be interesting. That'd be a good interview. To interview Steve Eady, the voice that you heard as the Starcaster voice, and talk a little bit about his what went into that. Now, I do know that here in the States, one competitor, if you will, to NOAA in terms of weather information that I am very, very impressed with, besides the Weather Service, is Weatherology. And I do want to thank the 6 people who actually took time to make voices for the app. Because we use their voices quite frequently on our phones, so I want to give them a shout out. Laura Lockwood, Derek Height, Ray Miller, Jennifer Wojcicki, as well as Megan Mulford and Ray Miller are the 6 voices that you get access to off the Weatherology app. And don't think that the Weatherology app just works here in the States. I've looked up weather in other parts of the world. And it's given me forecasts for those areas. So Weatherology is really good for doing that. And I kind of wonder if maybe Weatherology hasn't thought about maybe coming up with their own weather radio service. That would be a discussion. That who knows, maybe it's something they could think about. I've had people toss around the idea that maybe people will start coming up with their own homemade weather services to start covering these areas. And I got a feeling there's going to be someone with an undertaking, because if NOAA can do it, I feel like so can Environment Canada. Environment Canada's got a really good weather team. A lot of their weather forecasters have, spent a lot of time around the clock doing a lot of work to try to keep the weather information going. But the weather radio service has become harder to maintain. I know that much. But that's also created issues for the people worried about with storm spotting. Now, as of right now, Edmonton, as of the time of this recording, Edmonton is still broadcasting some weather information as we speak. Tom hasn't said no longer continued, as has happened with Ava on the Toronto broadcast, as well as the. So, if some of your weather radio stations are still going, I want some feedback from you. But to be honest with you, I think that it's a. Um, Hang on, I hear somebody putting in a pair of headphones. You guys are fine. They cannot hear. Um, oh, sorry about that. So anyway, the thing I want to say, guys, is, and this is, I think, kind of the important thing about this, is that, we're kind of in that position, in that predicament where, I'm going to say, just as somebody who's an avid weather follower, avid weather enthusiast, it's time for us to kind of be more serious about the safety of the people that we are, serving in our communities, the people that we look up. So, I mean, I do understand. Now, for those who do not know, if you want to hear some old weather radio cycles, because it's going to be a distant memory unless Environment Canada decides to change them out. This is not the first time that they've said that they were discontinuing their service. As a matter of fact, there was a point in 2022 where, due to funding, they had dropped their weather radio service, and there had been no determinated factor about them coming back. And then, of course, for a period at the end of 22, a lot of services stations started coming back. So while I say that, while they're right now saying permanent, do bear in mind enough of an outcry will probably happen. And I know I'm spawning probably one of the first reaction videos up here on this platform to talk about the pitfall. Probably not one of the first, but if not the first, that's probably made the announcement here in the States, that it's who's really pointed out the kind of concern, that I know of anyway. I haven't seen a lot of videos on this yet, but I mean, probably a lot of videos where people are posting the messages and letting people hear what the notices sound like that are being spoken. I think personally that it's kind of a big deal, and and a lot of people say ridiculous. I say, what's really the cause of the issue? Like, what is the problem specifically that we're running into? Now, again, I want to kind of emphasize that our weather service. Now, I do have concerns about some of the things our weather service has done over here too. I do think that they could use some additional voices. I think here the weather service needs to add more voices than just Paul. Um, I've done enough testing with Kate and Julie. I like the Kate voice, and I think she's good. I think even AI voices, 11 Labs would probably be good. I mean, there's qualities in each of the voices, and you can clone voices and actually have really good quality voices that are attention getting. And believe me when I say this, I've already gone through several scenarios here with uh, with that and things. Let me pause 1 second here so I can address something. And One of the things I want to say too, and I almost wish the girls were within a little bit easier reach of the headset, where I could strap the headset on and put it on their heads. But I think to get some opinion about this, like, what do you guys think, and kind of see kind of what everybody feels is, why do you feel like the weather radio service is a vital asset? And I'm looking to make sure I don't have the keyboard in the way to where
No,
people are in danger of sitting on the
no, you
keyboard.
don't.
Now, the first one that wants to reach up here, let's pass this up to Jess. It's going to take a second here. So she can explain to you where I think she feels, or actually, she can lean right in because I've got this right
I
here,
honestly feel like
where you feel it's vital.
I feel it's vital because there's those that are in their cars or those that don't really want to use their phone while they're driving, and it's honestly not safe to use your phone while you're driving anyway. And
Right.
it's like
As good as the Weather Can app is,
right,
which, by the way,
it can be
if
the
if you want to
greatest.
look
But
at Canada's weather, it's called Weather Can, as in CAN
okay,
app. So it's really really good.
but okay, my point is that I feel like it's great, but to a certain extent, you need the audio for when you're driving or when you're doing things that you can't grab your phone right then.
I think the question I pose is what's WeatherCan going to do to provide audio? If they're getting rid of the weather radio service, then how is everybody going to get their up to the minute forecasts? Yeah, they're going to be able to look at the app and do that, but what about audio forecasts?
And
You
what
know,
about those
why?
who are blind
What
who don't want
what
to?
about those who are blind or visually impaired who don't want to constantly scroll all the time? Maybe they'd like to hear their weather forecast in a loop. Let it play. I love. It's weird. I live here in the States, but I love being able to go look at Canadian stations and go, oh, it's doing this here in Toronto. It's doing this here in Barrie and Aurelia and stuff like that. And now we're gonna be figuring out how Plan B. How am I gonna do that? So it's one of those things that I wish they weren't doing. But again, we sort of have that to lean on. Other news with that too is that the weather radio service in Canada now comments their weather radio service. They said it can be directed to 1-877-789-7733. For those in French, I know I'm not the best French speaker, but that number in French, for those wondering, 1-877-789-7733. That would be the number, 7733. Um,
I didn't know you knew anything.
uh, and not a little bit. And that's why, for example, one of the things that I really emphasize, and I've emphasized this for a long time, we that that track the weather really rely on these resources a great deal. So that's sort of again, I'm doing this as a live stream because this is breaking out of, this is not entirely breaking, but it has been breaking the past couple of days out of Environment Climate Change Canada. So we're doing a slight bit of, breaking news here for you on the Brandon Hedges Blinded by Brandon channel. And, we are, of course, that's one thing we do here at Blinded by Brandon, which is a production of Brandon Hedges Productions. We sort of like to provide you with, if there's something of importance that we think affects you in the community. We don't just cover the United States, as you can understand. We also talk about Canada and how that affects and how people there may be affected by certain changes, especially when it comes to radio services and stuff like that. While we're on the subject of radio services, somewhat unrelated, there have been some questions about AM 590 in Omaha, and I do want to actually answer those because a couple of people came on my Telegram feed here recently. You could do that, by the way, through the Telegram ID Chinmouth86 at sign CHINMOUTH86 on Telegram if you want to comment. And one of the things that I heard the question come across is, why is AM 590 off the air? Well, AM 590, they have recently been having some technical problems, and of course, it's been an absolute mess. The biggest problem is, and why is it an absolute mess? Because a lot of people that remember AM 590 had been on the air since 1925, to my understanding, 1925 when they were on the air. So 101 years almost, and then they go off the air because the land was sold. And what most people don't know is there was no local programming for the last year and a half. They lost the rights to the Nebraska Cornhuskers radio network. By the way, yeah, I got to tell you something. I've become in some way very good friends with one of the Huskers Radio Network broadcasters, and I hope he's enjoying his weekend or week rather, despite the weather. But in reality, the biggest thing that really has been crossing my mind with this whole entire situation is AM 590 has had a large footprint. Now, one of the things I'm thinking about doing at some point is maybe starting my own radio station that'll cover here where I am, here in Iowa, and kind of going old school. Not, yeah, we're going to obviously the modern stuff, but old school with severe weather coverage, having a reminder tone every 60 seconds to kind of get you kept abreast of the, when there's a tornado warning out, and that's something. I've got some goals and aspirations, but a lot of that comes from my attempt that applies to other radio stations that have gone, south per se. I'm not gonna, in case anybody asks, no, I'm not gonna throw shade or anything like that. So don't ask me to do that because we're not gonna do that here. Because really, to be honest with you, they also, each people has a specific audience they're trying to target, a target audience, and it's really all in what you do. But here with that in mind, radio stations are a great thing. Radio is a great thing. Now, a lot of people have asked me, well, Brandon, have you thought about the fact that they are going to bring weather coverage at times and others? Well, actually, no, because here's the problem with radio stations in the U.S. and Canada right now. iHeart owns as iHeart, Odyssey, and those are the two big radio competitor companies that are really sort of like dominating the landscape for a lot of radio stations, with the exception of in the small towns where they're still locally owned. The locally owned stations aren't as prone to this, but iHeart is very prone to this, and it's sad to say, but they are. That the public media, they have a particular way they want things done, and it does affect how a lot of the weather coverage and a lot of all that stuff is done at a lot of radio stations. As I said, here we've got a couple of stations that do a fantastic job, and I think they should really get some broadcast awards for this. Because to be fair, I mean, just like the coverage of the April 17th severe weather outbreak last year was very well. And, a lot of people don't think about these local radio stations. I think about Cedar Rapids, Iowa City, KCJJ out there. They got some great people up there kind of keeping things going. And I think they're locally owned, if I'm not mistaken. I don't recall. I may be wrong, but according to my knowledge, I think KCJJ is locally owned. But, again, they can cover severe weather pretty well. So, and all of this goes right back to what I said before. Local radio today. Now, if you go back probably 30, 40 years, when you tune into a local radio station that was local, most stations were locally owned. Until Clear Channel bought out a couple of stations, and then Clear Channel became iHeart and so on and so forth. There's Cumulus, then there was, which I think Cumulus is still around. But they... how around are they in compared to somewhere like I'm not entirely sure, but that's one of the things that I've actually talked about. Just like nothing really stays the same in these parts. So I do want to kind of I do want to kind of bring some light to that and maybe get your takes on the weather radio uh, opinions here for weather can and or for Canadian weather spotters and people alike. You know, unfortunately, this means more looking at your phones, which means more of a danger on the road because you have to pull over to the side of the road. But it's more of a danger because, you know, granted, okay, I understand that Canada doesn't get near the tornado activity that we get here in certain parts. But Winnipeg has had tornadoes before, so has Toronto. Because to be fair, Toronto's not too far from Rochester, New York, and they've had their bouts with severe weather. Some of that stuff comes out of Rochester. So you know, you don't want to. I mean, Toronto is a great. You know, Toronto. I've never been to Toronto, but they're from what I understand, it's just a beautiful community. You know, they've got, but not having that weather information could be very damaging to the spotters, and I think or to the people spotting. So maybe one of the things that I would like to see you guys, you know, but to those who need that information, it could be very very big. You know, I'm not just going to look at one particular target audience for the audio. I want to look at that all of us. You know, if you're whether you can see or can't, the audio is important, especially if you're on the road. If you're somebody that's traveling or somebody that's you know out and about a lot, you're gonna want that drive. You're gonna want that option of being able to go, oh, cool. You know, we can go get that and get that information right out of the chute and here it's gonna be beautiful, just as it is. But that's but I think it's unfair to the community at large for them to drop the weather radio service. I have a lot of opinions about that, just like I have a lot of opinions about just using one voice at the Weather Service here. At the National Weather Service, NOAA's National Weather Service, I think needs to make some changes to their automated voice technology, not because it's bad, because honestly, that voice is very reliable. It's a very good voice. It's very clear. Most people understand it, but the fact there's no variety, you can't really tell what weather service office you're at because each one has the same thing. But what I do like is the potential that maybe what might start happening is if a weather service is down, programming might originate to another weather service temporarily while they work on and you know, with all the wireless technology, you know, they're trying to keep things going. They're trying to you know, centralize a lot of things and make it where it's so much more easier. You know, maybe what'll start happening is maybe what happens if NOAA decides, hey, let's expand our coverage into Canada because they don't have any weather radio stations that are on the air from Environment Canada, and they might go to the border. You know, they might cover places like the Torontos of the world. So I don't want those of you in Canada to get rid of your weather radio receivers just yet. Okay, so I hang in there and let's see what goes down over the next 6 months or so. What might occur? Weather streamers, if you're streaming on noweatherradio.org, I know I'm going to sound stupid by saying this. To Doug Chappelle and the rest of you that man that site, which is a very awesome site, noweatherradio.org. I was a site admin for a while who handled the accessibility of the webpage, which I haven't, you know, I had to back away from due to personal reasons. But to be honestly fair, I I can't emphasize enough that don't drop the streams because they may, who knows what'll happen. So I want all of you that are streaming from Canada, keep your streams going, because if you keep the streams going and send these to your Environment Canada teams, and I'll show them, like, look, here's my stream. This is what I do on a regular basis. I provide or stream to a website that covers all of these things. You know, Broadcastify, Halifax, Nova Scotia is in that list, and I'm going to be looking today to see if they end up taking their stream down, which, you know, so keep your streams up, those of you who are streaming Canadian Weather Radio. Um, I'm going to create at some point a Facebook page called Weather Radio Canada Audio. And anybody with broadcasts of severe weather, I would love to hear a full cycle from some of the areas I've never heard from, that I haven't heard from in later times, like Windsor, Kitchener, Waterloo, and some of the other areas. And I want to hear also from places uh, like uh, Brandon uh, and Sioux Lookout, Sudbury, Sault Ste. Marie, and kind of hear what you guys' weather radio areas they covered sounded like. I've had Saskatoon in my on. And I want to, really make sure that gets done. As a matter of fact, I'm going to let you guys hear real quick. I'm going to switch off my audio momentarily and let you guys hear what I'm hearing.
Cloud with 40% chance of showers. High 13. Wednesday night, cloudy periods. Low +1. Thursday, cloudy. High 9. Thursday night, cloudy. Low +2. Friday, cloudy with 60% chance of showers. High +3. Friday night, cloudy periods. Low -3.
Speech mode mute. Speech mode talk. Ops 32. Music top audio check.
The app I use is Tapin Radio. That's the app I use, and I was using that to go ahead and give you guys kind of a. That's what's coming out of Edmonton right now. So they're still going. Calgary has already lifted the curtain on their transmissions, except for the station ID, which is playing a constant stream, and that'll probably play for a few days. There'll be, like I said, there'll be a major petition. Some of the people have, that were petitioning for this in the past have said to me, well, it's a thing where WeatherCan has, gotten so much better and XYZ, and I'm like, okay, but still, we're forgetting about the safety of people on the roads. All right, we're forgetting about, here in the States, a lot of don't text while driving. If the Weather Service shut their transmitters down, I can tell you right now what would happen. Okay, I can tell you exactly what would happen. And this is as cut and dry as you're going to get. If we did that, what would happen is this, okay? And people can sit here and laugh at me. They could give me all kinds of dirty looks on this thought, but it's reality here. Well, what would happen? You'd see more people grabbing their phones, and the way things are on the roads nowadays, it would be a wreck. It'd be a serious wreck. It would be not a safe deal. If anybody knows of any other way they would be getting those alerts, and sure, you could say, well, yeah, but the wireless emergency alerts on the phones. Okay, honestly, those aren't as effective as you think, because people oftentimes turn a lot of things off on their wireless emergency alerts. Some people try to turn theirs off, so because they get all this stuff on their phones, so it's it's one of those things where I wish I knew kind of what we could do for a weather provision. And honestly, what about independent weather services? There's the National Weather Service, but then there's not independent weather radio services. That would be kind of an idea. What? Because whatever happens if NOAA goes down for some reason, or NOAA decides to pull their weather radio system. Now, I'm not saying that would happen, but if NOAA ever did decide to do that, it would be it would be something that people would, would ask. Well, what other options are there? But here's the thing. Okay, it's not like, and I think this is where we, take the politics out of it for a minute, because honestly, people want to put it in politics, and I think that's it's as much as you don't want to, sometimes you have to with certain things. But this is one of those things where it's about the general public's safety. So I want to get you guys' thoughts. You can contact my comment line at 641-715-3800. That's extension 94726. Hit the pound key and hit option 4, and you'll be able to leave me a voicemail on that. Forgive the audio on option 4. I recorded that while I was still battling a case of laryngitis in 2008. So I literally recorded that while I was actually So if you want to leave audible feedback, you may do so at that area. You may also message me on Telegram at Chinmouth86. Discord is I gotta go back and pull my Discord. So I'm gonna refrain from my Discord ID temporarily till I go in there and actually look at it again, because I know I changed it, and for the first time in my entire life, I actually forgot what I changed it to. So we're just gonna go with that for now until I actually get the user ID sorted out on Discord. But you may also find me on this channel. You may comment on my videos. Jess has done as always does a fantastic job of watching the comments that come across my feed and make sure that I see comments that come across. So any of you with comments and stuff like that you guys want to have about a specific subject, there's going to be an About Me video. I'm going to go out on a limb and talk some about me. Then I think maybe some people will appreciate that. Get to know your content creator. That's going to be the side of that, and that's maybe an idea for, maybe it starts a trend for some of you that want to listen in live, and you guys can comment in the chat, and I'm sure if you guys are chatting that you guys will probably want to do stuff like this for sure. But I do thank you guys for your time. I thank you guys for the fact that, again, many of you are, I know many of you are major weather radio fanatics. Many of you are a big fan of, catching the weather. A lot of people use noweatherradio.org like a toy. I think of it as a tool. I think of it as a very important tool. But I do believe nothing replaces that physical weather radio. And so please just, whatever you do, try to be, aware of that. And thank you for, again, your time and all the efforts that have gone into all that. So with all that in mind, this is Brandon Hennis reporting, and thank you for listening. This has been a special presentation of Brandon Hennis Productions and the Blinded by Brandon channel. Find more on the Blinded by Brandon channel. We're going to be taking down some of our major videos, but we'll be keeping up some of the other ones. We'll have a lot of content, so don't worry. Not just because we're taking down some content doesn't mean that we've forgotten about you. Doesn't mean we're doing it for any other reason but to kind of keep a clean channel. And we're going to have a lot more newer content.